My guest today says that getting top people to work for you isn't all about what you pay. Now, I know it can feel that way here in the fall of 2022, but according to her, there's more to it. I'm Carl White, principal at Mark Advisory Group, which is a healthcare marketing agency, and I'm also the host of PracticeCare. The mission for both is the same, and that's to help private practice owners stay private. Not only is that what they want, but I really believe that care is better when it's just you and your provider sitting at the table trying to figure out what's best for you. And nobody else is secretly whispering in the provider's ear what their agenda is. Not a hospital, not a health system, not owners in faraway lands, whoever else they might be. It's just you and your provider trying to figure out what's best for you. Today, my guest is Ronda Nelson. Ronda started her career as a bookkeeper until her daughter's life-threatening illness changed everything. She began studying functional medicine and started a highly successful wellness practice in Northern California. Her passion for business and marketing was clear when colleagues began asking her for help with practice-related issues, which grew into a coaching and mentoring business. And after 20 years in practice and educating others, Ronda has helped hundreds of wellness practitioners grow incredibly successful practices. She helps functional medicine practitioners transform their practices into thriving businesses through her podcasts, online courses, clinical membership, and business coaching programs. Ronda, thanks so much for coming on PracticeCare.
Hey, you're super welcome. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, so let's help our listeners kind of, get to know you a bit better and wrap their heads around you and your practice. So just tell us a bit more about your practice. And since we're going to be talking about staff, just kind of introduce us a bit to staff, like the numbers, and just to give us a sense.
Okay. Well, my practice now looks different than it did before, but to your point, I have always made sure that it was private practice. I never ever have been involved with anything else because I did want to have that control, and that ability to make the recommendations that I felt were right for the patient. So yeah, I started out about 25 years ago in practice, and I was scared to death to hire my very first employee, which I did. And I remember at the time thinking, and this just dates me for sure, but I remember thinking, oh my gosh, am I ever going to be able to make payroll if I pay this person $12 an hour? This is 25 years ago, but I was really petrified.
Which is a nice number 25 years ago. It's
yeah, right. I know. Yeah. So what I did was I ended up just, I did hire that first employee. And then that was when I had my brick and mortar and I had a full-time practice and I was booked out floor to ceiling, 5 full days a week. Sometimes I'd have to do another half day on a Saturday. I really couldn't get away. I had a waitlist practice. It was very, very, very busy. And I started to travel and teach and speak and train other clinicians how to do what I had done. They always said, how did you build such a great big practice? So I realized that what they thought they needed was more clinical know-how.
Yeah.
But what they really needed was to know how to run a business. Yeah. That's what they really needed. And so once the business foundational pieces are in place, the rest of it takes care of itself. So anyway, through that process, I started to kind of see that I could transform and change the way I was practicing from a big high overhead brick and mortar. And I ended up really transforming everything into a virtual practice. And so now the virtual piece of my practice is smaller than it was before. I do spend a lot of time working with practitioners just to help them grow and develop that business side of their practice. So now my staff looks a little different. I've got some staff that help me on the virtual patient side, and then I've got some that help me on the business coaching consulting side. But altogether, the team, I have 6. We're about to hire the 7th person.
Wow.
So I've got a pretty good sized team for me.
Yeah. So you're going, morning till night. I'm just going back to what you said earlier, morning till night, 5.5 days.
Brutal.
Exhausted, but somehow you figured out how to get out and grow the business. And you said, well, the practice, which is, you turned it into a business. Obviously, just that involved people and systems, among other things, right?
Yeah.
To kind of remove you from the day to day. So you needed people.
I had to have people because I was drowning with all the busy practitioner stuff. You've got your clinician hat on, and I'm making notes and keeping up with that and follow up. And so I hired this office manager for $12 an hour, the first one. And she didn't work out. And so I let her go. And that was my first firing, and it was a disaster. You don't do it well, and
Yeah.
everybody cries, and it was a big drama.
Yeah.
And so then I hired somebody else, and she ended up staying with me for 8.5 years. And that was just wonderful. Like and still very good friends to this day. So
Hmm.
she came on, and then I realized, okay, a front desk person or like an office manager person is not enough. There was just too many bodies running through. We just had, inventory we were managing and all the things,
Hmm.
patient paperwork and all the things. So I had to hire somebody else. And that person didn't work either because I didn't know what I was doing. Like I didn't understand about how to hire right people. I got lucky with my office manager is what happened. I just got
Yeah.
lucky. But this other
And
one,
you think you know what you're doing. Oh, I can do that
yeah,
again.
exactly it was a false sense of confidence, and my ego I'm like, oh, I got this. I
Look at
got
this.
Marcy over
Yeah.
here. I'm down for this. So I hire another one, and it was a nightmare. She was like bringing her kids into the office after work and using the sauna, and I didn't have cameras. I happened to come in at night and saw him, and she was in there having a party in
Wow.
my office. And
Wow.
so then this is the dysfunctional side of, I think, being a business owner, is that because we don't know how to deal with a situation like that, then we do nothing but we just get mad. And
Yeah.
so that's what I did, was I just got mad. I went home and I got mad. I was just like, "Rrr." And then I didn't know I just didn't know what to do. The last firing I did was a disaster. And I'm
Hmm.
thinking, well, I'm going to walk into this one as a disaster. So I'm just telling you the truth.
Yeah.
So not proud of this, but it's what I did. I thought, well, the last time I fired somebody, it was awful. Everybody was crying. So I'm going to avoid the crying. And this time I will text her and fire her.
Oh my God.
I know. I know it's not my most proud moment, but
You
I
just
was
avoid
literally
seeing the crying.
right. That was my solution. So I was like, oh, so I was at
And
a
you want to make
rest
sure
stop.
she never comes back, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That was it. I was
There
at
you
a
go.
rest stop. I'll never forget it. I know exactly where I was. I was traveling and I thought, okay, I got the courage. I'm going to do it right now. I pull over in the rest stop. I get out my phone. I text her and say, thank you so much for all that you've done. I really appreciate you, but this is your last day. Please give your keys to Marcy on the way out. I'll be there in an hour and I expect to see your desk cleaned out. So then I swung all the other way. I was very avoidant.
Hmm.
I very, and not nice, which is not like me. Like I am a very nice person by my
Hmm.
nature. And so that didn't feel good either. And so now I'm just left with Marcy again. I'm like, well, this is a bus that is on the road to a big old train wreck if I
Yeah.
don't get this figured out. And so that was when I really started to think, okay, did I really hire the right person when I hired Marcy, or did I get lucky, or was there some other secret sauce in there? And it's just taken me all these years to figure out, how to really hire the right people. And the biggest thing I can tell you is hiring the right people means you have to have a rigorous hiring process.
Yeah. Hold on to that
That's
because we're going
how
to get there.
you get the right people. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so let's take us to the point in time where it's starting to dawn on you. I've got, I need better people. I need that kind of consistently. What were some of the signals that said to you had a people problem to begin with? Because the reason I ask is it probably starts pretty subtly and it could just sort of fester for a while before it becomes noticeable. But all that time is a problem. And so my hope is that you'll give listeners an insight to, oh, that's what that is? That little thing I never noticed? That could be the beginning of, so what was it for you?
You mean when I knew I needed more people?
Well, when you had like really more where you weren't getting the quality of people that you
Oh,
wanted.
oh, oh. Yeah, well, I went through a few more after the texting firing. I
Mhm.
went through a few more people, and my other next strategy, because the first two strategies didn't work, the next strategy worked pretty well for me and maybe for them, but it was very passive aggressive, which I didn't want. But I just sort of made their life uncomfortable enough so that they would leave. And
Okay.
I just like decreased hours and, didn't give them a lot of work to do and, said, you don't need to come in today. There's nothing to do. And that doesn't have any intent. I mean, I've just done all the wrong things, but
Mhm.
it was after a couple more people. I think it went through 4 or 5.
Mhm.
And all the while, Marcy's been with me. I mean, she's like my rock. I
Mhm.
got lucky with her, but I just realized that I could not, I think the aha moment was I had a big vision about how I wanted to impact the people in my community,
Mhm.
and I couldn't get there. And I knew that I was the rate limiter.
Mhm.
And I was the rate limiter because I had issues with, I had lack of knowledge about how to hire. And I got angry, and angry, like internal, you just like self-critical is really what it was. I just was like, why is this not happening? And why can't I find the right people? And why don't people want to work? Or why can't the right way? What is wrong with me? Why am I not? And I knew that I had this big vision, and I knew I needed people to help me get there, but I just didn't know how to, I didn't know how to bring them in. And then I was kind of criticizing myself because I clearly got them in and then didn't know how to get rid of them either.
Right.
So, yeah.
So for you, the first signal was you took a look at yourself. You said, maybe you put it this way,
100%.
Well, can it really be all them? Maybe the common denominator, it's the common denominator, which is me, which is a degree of self-awareness that is probably on the minority of, in the population out there. But that's, yeah. So, hey,
well,
listeners,
and what happens,
you don't need 4 or 5. Like if you have a bad hire and it just goes bad, say, before I have 4 or 5 more of these, among other things, why don't I have a look in the mirror?
Yeah. And that was what I realized, that I was the one, I had this big vision, and I knew that I was the bottleneck. I knew that it was my either skill or lack of skill or whatever it was, that I knew that I was the one that needed to change, and I needed to hire differently, and I needed to think about it differently. And then I needed to up my leadership skills so that I could then, if it did go south and I did end up with a bad hire, that I could let them go with integrity. And so that they felt loved when they left, and I didn't feel like I had just slimed somebody. I did, because that was completely out of integrity for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And you started to say it, but what were some of the first changes, and then like the big changes that you made? If you think of before and after, before you did it, it sort of didn't go well and it led to text firings and things. And then after, now it's, nobody's perfect, but I'll bet you your success rate is better than it used to be. So give us like, what were the big changes that you made that others could benefit from hearing about?
Well, the first thing that I did was I got very clear about the expectations in the role. And at the time that I was hiring, this is years ago, but at that time, job descriptions were typically, must have computer experience, must have phone skills, must have, be able to walk and chew gum, must be appropriately dressed. It was all benign like that, but that was what everybody did. Must have Microsoft skills. Everybody did. So I'm not saying anything radical in there. And I thought, if I want a different quality of person, then I have to put a different benchmark in the job description. That was my very early first aha, was I had to create the job description so that it was compelling.
Yeah.
So I wanted someone to not go, oh, I can do all those things. Okay, yeah, whatever. Here's my resume. I wanted someone who wanted to work with me, who believed in what I was doing and wasn't just there for a paycheck. I wanted them to buy into my vision and my passion, because I knew that if I could get them to buy into what I was doing, then they would be much more likely to stick, because they also share that same passion. So I realized that probably a good pool of people to start from, although this was a hard one for me, and I still am not sure exactly that I've figured all of this out, but I knew that the people that were going to be passionate about what I do were my patients. And
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So, all right, that seemed to me to be,
or
like,
at least
the
a subset of them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or they know someone or something. So I said, well, I'm just going to ask them. So I sent an email out and I said, we've got a job opening and this is what we're looking for. And instead of leading with, you have to have nice teeth, very nice hair, good clothes, and Microsoft, all the benign stuff, instead of leading with that, I just said, this is who we are. This is what we believe, which they knew already. This is the person that I'm looking for. And then these are the things that this person will need to do. Not the skills they had, but what they needed to do. But I realized my early aha was I had to create a culture fit. First, I had to get the culture fit, because I could teach the skill, but I had to get the culture fit. So that was my very first big aha. And that I still, to this day, this was years ago, to this day, that is still my number one criteria.
Yeah.
I fit them to my culture, because if they believe and buy into what I'm doing, they're passionate about helping people, they're passionate about, functional medicine, because that's my space, then they don't leave.
Yeah.
Because it feels that deep need for them to be able to continue. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're we've had a few other guests come on and we've talked about the people side of things, and it always gets back to vision and culture. People will stay for a culture. And I don't want to go, too far down this, but I'm wondering just, how long did it take you to figure out your culture? Like what, are you happy with where it is? Does it resonate with other people?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think it took me, the culture, the way I defined it at the time was how I, really, it was both subjective and objective, my assessment of my work culture. But you can never get a good objective. It's always going to be a combination of those two. And I realized that there were some things or themes that started to kind of come out all the time. And over the course of 5 years or so, I realized that those commonalities in the culture were what I now call my core values, or the attributes of our company. And I used to think core values, like, who has core values? Of course, integrity is your core value, honesty is your core
Customer
value. Okay,
service,
whatever.
right? Yeah.
Customer service. Okay, blah, blah, blah. But I realized that be deeper than that, that for me personally, because my business, my practice is just an extension of who I am. I can't be any different in my business than I am in real life. Otherwise, it's an out of integrity, and it's a mismatch, and it's never going to work.
Yeah.
So who am I? So back to having that internal discussion, I had to look at myself. Who am I? And then the first questions that I started to ask, when I realized that it was deeper than just culture, it was more core values.
Yeah.
I said, well, what are my core values? Well, one of my core values that makes me madder than mad every time it happens is if I'm out in a store and I get bad customer service, I am pissed. I mean, but I just am like, look, I'm paying your bills. I don't need you to go over. I don't need a red carpet out, but I just want you to be nice to me. Like, don't be rude to me. Don't. So I realized, oh, that kind of makes me mad when that happens, or upset. That's got to be a core value for me. And so I realized, like, integrity, customer excellence, like having that excellence. One of my core values is fun. If it's not fun, I'm not doing it. I will draw the line. So that means the people on my team also have to be what? Fun.
Fun. Yeah.
And I would have never put that in a job ad before. I would have never done that. But I realized that was something that was important to me. And guess what? I'm the boss. So I can make it any way I want to. And if it works for you, great. And if it doesn't, great. So when I started to write my job description internally, like, what does this job require? What kind of core values, what attributes, what does this person need to fit within my culture? That right there was the biggest game. That was the biggest game changer, was when I got clear. Because I think core values are like guardrails on a bridge.
On behavior.
And and it puts the guardrails up so everybody knows. And if I have somebody on the team that isn't inside those guardrails, they're bouncing around outside of them, then it's real easy for me to have that conversation with them and say, hey, these are our core values, but I'm seeing that these are not happening. Let's talk about this. And if they can't, then they see that they're not a good fit. And so then when we have to terminate the relationship, it's not because you're fired or I'm sending a text. It's because we both see that this is not a good fit in this business.
And it can't be rectified, right?
Yeah.
And so we've been talking about finding a player. So obviously figuring this out, your core values, your culture, this was a pretty big deal with being able to find a player. And you also mentioned hiring process. So tell us more, why is culture such a big deal for A players? Why is hiring process? What,
So,
tell us about that.
For your listeners, I would say, if you're not driving, don't do this while you're driving. But if you are, if you've got a pen and a paper, you may want to write this down, because I'm gonna drop it all to you right here. Okay. So here's how I do my hiring process. So I first filter them by their ability to what do I want to say? Self-identify that they follow and really love my core values. So my job ad, the first half of a job ad I place, is all about my culture, my core values, and who this person needs to be a good fit. And that way I can teach them the skill, but I cannot teach integrity, and I cannot teach fun, If you are not a fun person, then I am not going to be your right person.
Right.
So I'm just, that's okay too. You can go be your boring self, but the fun people hang out with me. So I put that was the very first part of the hiring process, but I did it in the job, the job posting. Once at the very bottom, and this is the first thing, this is the key. At the very bottom of the job posting, I put something to the effect of, if you feel like this job describes you perfectly and you're in the top 10% of the people that would ever want to apply, then here's what I want you to do. I ask them to send me 2 personality tests, not because I really care about the personality tests, but I want to see if they can follow instructions. This is important for me because we work really hard in my world. Everybody works hard. We've got 18 players and 18 people want to play with other 18 people. They don't want to play with people who just want it for a paycheck. They're like in it to win it. And so I want to see, how does this person do? So I have them do these 2 free personality tests. And I ask them to send me their resume, which I don't really care so much about. And I ask them to send it to a certain email with very specific 3 words in the subject line. Now that seems like a lot, but here's how it reads. If you feel like you're the top 10%, et cetera, send your resume, take these 2 tests, screenshot the results, put all 3 of those things in an email, send it to this email, and put blue parrot feather in the subject line. And so what this does,
do it?
The people that don't do it, I don't want them.
But how many don't do it?
About 80%.
Wow.
But awesome. What that means though, is that they just didn't read the whole job post.
Yeah.
That's all it means. And so I actually have an opening right now that I'm hiring for. And I happen to have it on Indeed, which is not my favorite place to put things, but I just tossed it out there. So it's been up for 3 weeks and I have yet to have one person read the whole ad because I don't have anything in my inbox that says blue parrot feather or whatever my words are. What they do is they'll resume spam you. And so they just send I won't even look at them. I don't care. If you don't care enough to read the whole job description and get to the very bottom, then you're not my person.
Yeah.
So there's my huge filter. So then if they get to the bottom and if they send me their stuff, then the next step is I want them to send me a 3-minute video telling me why they're great they would be just perfect for the job. This weeds out about 50% more. But in my world, I need someone who's very confident and very comfortable in their skin because that's part of my culture, right?
So if we start with 10 and you say 80%, so now we're down to 2. So one of those 2 sends you a video.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Correct. And so I get.
But the side note is here, you haven't spent any time yet, which is important.
0 time. Yeah. 0 time. This is why this works.
Yeah.
So then I have them send me the video and I'm telling you, we have had the funniest videos come back. I mean, just if the walls could talk, this is that. This is all of that. So the videos come back and I know within the first 20 seconds whether this person's going to even be a good fit. And you just get a lot of people. And then we just kindly send them an email back and say, hey, thank you so much. Thank you. Got your video. We will be, looking at it and we'll reach back out soon if we're ready to take you to the next step. Then we don't reach back out if it's a bad video. So I might end up with 3 or 4 or 5 videos and maybe only one of them is good. Then the next step is I give them some homework to do. So I hired somebody one time in a different business, but I hired someone one time that had to create invoices and receive payments from the customers. And there was often some, coupons and things that needed to be applied. And I realized that she didn't understand math. And if I was going to give this, it was true. If I was going to give like a 25% off coupon, then you would take $10, you would apply 25% off, which is $2.50. And then the person would pay $7.50. She had it backwards.
Oh my God. She charged more.
So she was giving them a 75%.
Oh.
Okay. And I'm only getting $2.50. And I'm looking at my cash flow for like a month or so. I'm thinking, we've been busy, but why is my cash flow so low?
Yeah.
And no one said anything. And so and I said, okay, that's where we put this skill in. So I test their math skills, whatever skill I think they need. I do that part, that in that second, I do 2 rounds of assessment tests. And then after they pass those, that's when I do my first Zoom interview.
Okay.
So I have a team.
Love it.
It's the best system. I have used this system for over 10 years. And I now get the best people because they've jumped
in a very efficient way.
In a very efficient way that doesn't take me hours and hours and hours to comb through resumes, because resumes don't tell you anything.
No, they really
don't. Only put on the resume what they want you to see.
Well, there's a whole large industry on how do you make your resume look as good, which is not in to your advantage. Yeah. So, how much does what you pay factor into finding A players? Because that's the thing, let me just throw more money at them. It's look it around. There's inflation. There's, I tell people, I've seen teenagers make 15 an hour to do jobs where there is no math, there is no everything. So isn't it just about pay? And your response is?
No. These millennials, I mean, I'm 60 and I still got lots of life and attitude in me. So I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. But what I have found is the new hiring pool. I would love it if everyone was like me, because we always want everybody to be like me. I want you to have a good work ethic. I want you to have this, 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 and this. But some of these, I'm going to call them kids because I can't say that because of my age. But these younger ones that are coming up in the rank, and they're the huge labor pool. These millennials are a labor pool. And what's important to them is cause and culture. Cause and culture. So when you create a culture that they want to be in, i.e., they want to be in a place that's fun. They want to be in a place that is very strict. They want to be in a place that's intellectual. They want to, whatever's right for them. You have to attract them first on the culture. They will stay because of the culture and what you bring to the community. In other words, like your internal culture, and then also how are you contributing to the world as a whole? They're very, I'll say, purpose driven, like, a green earth and save the whales and save the pets. And they want that type of they want to have a meaning. And so I am fine with those things. And I don't mind giving my money where I want to give my money. But I would, at my age, with my background, when I was, younger, we never had cause in our businesses. That was what you did personally. Like you just did that. But now that's what they want. So your culture is big, the cause is big, but people that leave, less than 25%, it's actually 24% of the millennial age, or the largest gen that we have in the work pool, less than 24% of them left because of money.
There it is.
60% left because they said, I didn't like the culture. I couldn't vibe with the culture. So I think as business owners in practice, you have to invest in your people and create a culture where they want to come to work. And that means as a leader, you got to step up. You got to have stand-up meetings. You got to make it fun. You got to do some retreats. You got to have a bowling night. You got to have a costume, or whatever it is your culture. Like that's mine. But you got to make it so that it's a place where people want to be. Because if they don't want to be there, and you as the leader don't make it an awesome place to work, they'll go. And then your turnover's high. And then here we go again, trying to hire and train. Hiring and training people is the most expensive cost on your bottom line. It's just not one that you see on your P&L.
Right. And let's say you're listening to this, or, those who are listening to this, and you're hearing what Rhonda just said, and you're saying, I don't believe her. I'm just going to pay more. Ask yourself this: if you've ever looked at something or been in some experience and you've said to yourself, they couldn't pay me enough to keep doing that. There's just no amount of money on earth that would get me to go back there tomorrow, whatever. Well, then it's not all about the money for you, because if it were, you'd take a number and you'd go back. If it's not all about it for you, you're not the only one on planet Earth who feels the same way. And so what Rhonda says makes a lot of sense. You have to pay competitively. It is true. But throwing more money at somebody who's unhappy in the attempt to make them more productive, better fit, happier, maybe you get a month, maybe some short term, but guess what? They're gone anyway. You're in a worse spot and you're out more money. So if it can happen to you, it can happen to anybody else. So please take that one home. Rhonda, this is awesome stuff. I really especially appreciate you sharing your hiring process in such great detail. It's really innovative. It's very cool. And it's so funny in a way. It's like, yeah, read the whole stupid thing. Read the job description.
Yeah, just read it.
Just
and
read
then
it.
I feel like I put the little booby trap down on the bottom.
Yeah,
At the very end, I've booby trapped the whole job description. And so now, if they get to the bottom and they actually take their, I want to see how they took the personality test. Did they just hold their camera up in front of their screen and take it on their screen, or did they actually screen grab it and save it and name it and then attach the name? I want to see, like, those are details that I need to see in my world. I want someone who's attentive to details, right?
Right.
So it's been the best fit. It saved me hours and hours and hours. I can't even tell you how much time. And we've got the whole thing automated now.
Yeah.
And so my team very little time as well.
Yeah. And the other thing about cause is, our listeners own healthcare practices. So you're kind of already on the road to a good cause, aren't you? Because you're trying to help people every day. And that's why you got into it.
Right.
So others can get along as well. So a couple of really good points in there. A couple of questions, Ron, I ask everybody as we're kind of wrapping up every guest as we kind of bring it home. And the first one is, now that you've heard our conversation and the questions that I've asked, is there anything you think our listeners need to know about, holding on to and getting A team players that I just didn't ask you about?
I think the one last thing I would say is when you do find that really high end, like they're in it to win it, they're very goal task oriented, motivated, they will more than pay for their salary in the output that they'll give you.
Right.
And so I, in general, will pay 10% more than the market for an A player. Because I want to make them know that the money, everybody works for money, but I also know that they have a superpower. And their superpower is that they are an A team player. They're like, and I say A team, we didn't really define A team, but like basically these are the people that
they're top people.
They're the top people. They're the top worker. They're innovative. They're hardworking. They're problem solvers. They'll push back. If you have an idea as the leader, they're going to say, wait a minute, we're not taking into consideration X, Y, or Z. I want those people on my team. I want the ones that are going to give me pushback to say, wait a minute, you didn't think about it from this perspective. I think X, Y, Z. So I'm willing to pay them more than what they could get elsewhere, because I know that the impact they're going to have and the bottom line impact revenue wise that they're going to make in the business more than pay for their salary. So the money then becomes a non-issue for me. Perfect.
And then my other question is, for those listening who are, looking at their staff going, feels like something's off, and I want to change that, are there one or two tangible steps you'd recommend that they could take as soon as they're done listening to, get that change going?
Well, I would say if you want a written out, I'll write out the steps, because I just went over them pretty fast. But if they want to just email me, I'm happy to send it. I'll just send that out, because I did kind of rattle. My staff's going to kill me when they hear that I just volunteered them to make a new resource, but that's all right. But just email support@rondanelson.com and I will make sure that I get that to you. And I'll just get all of it written out for you step by step by step. I'll give you some email copy that we use, some ideas for maybe like skills tests, and then you can take it and run with it and give it to somebody on your team that can execute it well. But you as the leader, you need to be out of this process. The only time that you need to get involved is to look at the videos to see if you resonate with the person, or when you do that first Zoom call. Right. And that's it. The rest of it, you have nothing to do with any of it. So I'm happy to do that. I don't mind.
Perfect. Awesome. Rhonda, thank you again. I really appreciate you coming on PracticeCare, sharing these insights. They're fantastic. And Rhonda, so we're going to put all your contact information in the show notes, including that email address that you just gave. But those of you, if you already wrote it down, then you're covered. And so, all of Rhonda's contact info will be there and available. And just a couple of points before we wrap up. If you have had an experience on the business side of your practice like Rhonda, or you serve private practices like me and some of our other guests, and you've got some expertise that you would like to share to help private practice owners stay private, well, then we want you to come on PracticeCare as soon as possible. In the show notes for Rhonda's episode and all the other episodes are instructions on what you need to do. Just tell us what's on your mind so that we can get you scheduled as soon as possible. And finally, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to PracticeCare on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks very much, and until next time.